The slums of the fishing town reeked of rot and desperation. The narrow streets twisted like veins, choked with refuse and the stench of unwashed bodies. Shabby wooden buildings leaned against each other like drunks, their walls stained with mildew, their rooftops sagging beneath years of neglect. Daemonweaver moved through the filth like a specter, the heavy cloak she had taken from the temple shielding her from the biting ocean wind. Lothenia's presence was a constant pulse within her, a warm, humming hunger that urged her forward. "This place is ripe, my love," Lothenia whispered, her voice curling through Daemonweaver's thoughts like smoke. "Faith is thin here. The people suffer. They beg for salvation, yet their goddess does not answer. But we shall." Daemonweaver smirked. The search for a room was simple enough. The Seabreak Inn was no more than a sagging tavern with a handful of dingy rooms for rent. The owner, a man with rotting teeth and fingers yellowed from pipe smoke, barely looked up when she placed a few stolen coins on the bar. "Top floor, last door on the left," he muttered, scooping up the money with grubby hands. Daemonweaver took the key without a word. The room was as wretched as she expected. A straw-filled mattress on a wooden cot, a rickety table, a basin of water that smelled faintly of rust. A single candle flickered in the draught, casting shadows that danced along the walls. It would do. She shrugged off her cloak and sat on the edge of the bed, closing her eyes. And she reached. The power stirred beneath her skin, a living thing, eager and insatiable. She let it unfurl, spreading like unseen tendrils through the streets below, slithering through cracks in doors, winding through alleyways, brushing against the souls of the lost and desperate. She felt them, the gamblers drowning in debt, the dock workers bitter and broken, the harlots weary and aching, their bodies sold for scraps, the merchants greedy and willing to betray. All of them were hers to take. "Begin," Lothenia whispered, her voice laced with hunger. And Daemonweaver did. At first it was small, a whisper here, a lingering touch there. She moved through the slums like a shadow, speaking to those who had been cast aside. She offered warmth where none was given, a smile where only scorn had once been. She listened to their suffering, their loneliness, their aching desires, and then she offered them more. Pleasure, power, release. Some she lured with nothing more than a glance, a brush of fingers against their skin, a whispered promise of things they had only dreamed of. Their inhibitions melted beneath her touch, their darkest wants laid bare before her. And when they were at their weakest, when their hearts pounded with longing, she branded them, marking them with Lothenia's unseen sigil. They never noticed it at first, but it changed them. The mark burned through their souls, hollowing them out and filling them anew with hunger, devotion, corruption. They woke from their nights with Daemonweaver different, their faith in Amara wavering, their thoughts plagued with forbidden desires. They became hers, willingly, without knowing why. She took them one by one. The town guard captain, a man known for his righteousness, now knelt before her in secret, begging for her touch. A merchant's wife, once devoted to her family, now whispered prayers to a goddess she did not name as she shivered beneath Daemonweaver's hands. And for those who would not be missed, she fed them to Lothenia. The first soul she gave was a fisherman, a brute of a man with hands like knots of rope. He had come to her drunk, thinking her a common whore, leering as he shoved a handful of coppers at her feet. Daemonweaver had smiled. He had died with that same smile reflected in her eyes, his soul ripped from his flesh in a soundless scream, devoured by the abyss before his body even hit the ground. His death was not noticed, a drunken fool vanishing into the night. No one cared. So she took another, and the more she fed, the stronger Lothenia's whispers became, the more pleasure she felt as the goddess coiled around her mind, filling her veins with power. "More, my love, we are just beginning." Daemonweaver laughed. By the time the first month had passed, the town was rotten to its core. On the surface, nothing had changed. The people still prayed to Amara. The priests still held their sermons. The town square still rang with the laughter of children, the cries of merchants, the hammering of the blacksmith's forge. But beneath it all, Daemonweaver's web had been spun. Her influence reached from the slums to the highest echelons of power. The merchants, the guards, the harlots, even some of the temple acolytes, all hers, whether they knew it or not. Their faith had been twisted, their desires unleashed, their souls tainted. And in the dead of night when the world was asleep, they gathered in secret. They whispered the name of their new goddess. They worshipped. Daemonweaver stood before them in the flickering candlelight, the dark brand of Lothenia glowing unseen upon their flesh. She owned them. "Are you ready, my love?" Lothenia purred, her voice laced with satisfaction. "Ready to take what is yours?" Daemonweaver smiled. It was time to claim this town.